Shalom, Apostle Tahar coming back at you with the truth, giving all praise to Yahawah, bahasham, Yahawashi. And I'm going to entitle this Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter and the 68th verse, and etymology. Because what I want to do is I want to go to this chapter and verse, and I want to go into the root words. You know, when you look up the word etymology, the word etymology means it's a noun, and it means the study of origins of words and the way in which their meanings have changed throughout history. It goes on to say the origin of a word and the historical development of its meaning. So that's the common definition of the word etymology. So I'm going to read the scripture, Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. And I'm going to read it verbatim. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. My question is, Moses spoke to the children of Israel. Where did Moses speak to the children of Israel? And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So now let's go to the root of some of these words. Okay, you have the first word. It says in the Lord, and the word there is Yahawah, which is the supreme power of the universe. It says, shall bring thee into Egypt. The word Egypt is a Martazarium, which when you click on Martazarium, it's one of the four sons of Ham or Chum. That's why these individuals in the so-called black conscious community, they use that term Kemite or Kem, which they're actually saying Ham's name. So they're right when they use the word Kemet and Kem, because that's the father of Mizraim, Put, Canaan, and Cush, which, you know, it's common knowledge that the sons of Ham are the people in dwelling in the continent of Africa, so-called African, so you can understand. Okay. It says with ships, and the actual word there in the Hebrew is anayah, which means ship or ships. By the way whereof I spake, and that word is amar, which means to say, speak. And sometimes you come across the Hebrew word dabar, which also means to speak. It says wherefore I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold. Now the Hebrew word for sell or sold is makar. So when you click on that word, if you go to the blue letter, it means to sell, seller, to be sold, to sell oneself, to be given over to death, to sell oneself. The best definition is sell or sold or to be sold. So this is Moses talking to the children of Israel in the wilderness. And he's saying, you are going to be sold. You're going to be brought back to Egypt. And we know it's not talking about ancient Egypt. You know, there's a reference in Revelation 11 chapter where John, in the 8th verse, when you read the 8th verse on down, it speaks about Sodom and Egypt. So we know it's not talking about Sodom and Egypt. You had the ancient Egypt and you have the modern Egypt. And the modern Egypt is America. That's why when you go down to D.C., you have the Washington Monument, which is nothing but a so-called Egyptian obelisk. Okay, so the word sold in the Hebrew is H4376, makar. And I believe, could be wrong, but the word makar, that's where you get the English word market. Because a lot of these English words, the common English, a lot of these words go back to the Hebrew. Like the word sabbatical, that goes back to the word Shabbat. Which means rest. So when you go on your sabbatical, you're resting. You know, whether you're a teacher and you take a number of years off, you're on what's called a sabbatical. It says, unto your enemies, for bondmen. Now the word bondmen means that they have papers on you. That's why during the time of our people being enslaved by the so-called white man in the antebellum South, we you know, each slave master had papers on you. That's why you have our people with the last name Smith, Jones, Watkins, Jenkins, Fisher, because they owned us, so they gave us their names, their last names. So the word for bondmen or bond is H5650, which is Ibad, which means servant, manservant, bondman, bondage, bondservant on all sides. You know, it's one thing to take somebody against their will, but it's another thing to have papers on an individual. That's why when the slaves ran away from the plantation, they had petty rollers, which are your modern, would be called your police today, that go out there and capture you. And they showed you that in the movie on the Nat Turner story, Birth of a Nation. They showed you how Nat's father escaped, and they had the the petty rollers or the patty rollers look for them. And you had the federal government that would capture slaves, or you had the governments in the South would capture slaves and bring the slaves back to the master. That's why when you went somewhere, you had to have papers written by the master that you were going from point A to point B. So anybody that can't see that, this is referring to the so-called Negroes during the slave period, hard bondage. There's something wrong with you. And when you go into the word bond, matter of fact, let me go to it. When you go to the word bond, because what it means in the simplest form, it means that someone has papers on you. That's why you go to the Bill's bondsman. Okay, here you have bond. Okay, finance. It says, in finance, a bond is an instrument of indebtedness of the bond issued to the holders. The most common types of bonds include municipal bonds and corporate bonds. Okay, in finance, a bond, it's pretty much says the same thing. Let me look up bond men. Or bond man. Okay, good. Bond man. Now, bond means they have papers on you. But I put in bondman, as you can see, and it says noun archaic, which means old. It says noun bondman, a serf, a slave. So the difference between a bondman, a bondwoman, and someone that's been kidnapped is when somebody kidnaps you, they're doing it against your will, and you can be charged for that criminally. Now, if you own somebody back during the time of slavery, if you own somebody, they have papers on you. The military is the same thing. When you join the military, you become a slave to them. You become a slave to the military for whatever, 6-7 years. That's a bond. That's why they can tell you when to get up, how much exercise to do, PT, physical training. They don't give you menus as to what you want to eat that morning. You eat what everybody else eats because you're a bondman. So when you join the military, you basically becoming a slave. So you dumb Negroes out there that don't know what the hell is going on. Anyway, so let's go back. That's why you got to know these root words, the etymon, or the etios, or the etymology of a word. Okay, it says, okay, and there you shall be sold a makar unto your enemies. That's the so-called white man in this case, for bondmen, slave men, meaning they have papers on you. That's why you got to walk around. Anything that you do officially, go to the DMV, open up a checking account, a savings account, go for a job interview. You have to give them what? Your papers. Your social security number. So any of you jakes out there that think you're not slaves to this day, then you're an idiot. And then what they did was, these Edomites are bondmen too to this society. And bondwomen. And no man shall buy you. So now let's look up the word buy in the Hebrew, which is quana, which means to buy, get, purchased, buyer, possessor, purchase, owner, recoverer, redeemed. Like if you go to a pawn shop and you have to, they call it hocking your guitar, your watch or whatever. You might have a $3,000 watch or $5,000 watch, come into hard times, and the pawnbroker, he might give you $1,000. Now, when you get your money right, he might charge you $1,000 plus another 15%, or however they do it. So the best definition for this word, which is quana, is redeemed. Because if you look up the word redeemed, okay, it says redeem, compensate for the fault or bad aspects of something. Let me go to 2. I don't like that different definition. It says gain or regain. So I gave you the example of a pawnbroker. You give something that you have of value, they give you a certain amount of money for it. You use the money so you can pay rent or whatever, so you're not evicted. And maybe in another 3 months you get back on your feet, you go back to the pawnbroker and you go back to redeem the item that you gave to the pawnbroker. I mean, this is simple, man. It says gain or regain possession of something in exchange for payment. His best suit had been redeemed from the pawnbroker. Synonyms: retrieve, regain, recover, get back, reclaim, repossess, buy back. Billy redeemed his drums from the pawnbroker. So now let's go back to Deuteronomy 28. It says, and ye should be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Meaning no man shall redeem you. No man shall buy you back. As a people, because Moses is talking to a people here. Going back to the reference of the movie 12 Years a Slave. Well, I didn't speak on 12 Years a Slave, but in 12 Years a Slave, at the end of the movie, at the end of the 12 years, a friend of his, which was an Edomite, came down to get what was his name? Solomon North up. He came with authorities to redeem Solomon Northup, and he showed the slave owner papers that he's a free man. So what did he do in essence when he showed the slave master them papers? He redeemed Solomon Northup. The bond that this man had, the papers that this man had, the friend of Solomon Northup, which was an Edomite, so-called white person, trumped the bond papers that the slave had, because he wasn't born a slave. He was tricked into going back into slavery. And that's a true story. They tricked him and they put him in slavery. He was born a free man, and he was a slave for 12 years. But Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, the word Qanah, Moses is talking to the children of Israel, the sons and daughters of Israel. And he's saying that you're going to go into slavery, you're going to go to Egypt again with ships, and you shall be sold for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. No man as a people shall redeem you. Even to this day, we're still in Egypt. We're still in modern Egypt. When you go to Revelation, you won't understand this unless you go to Revelation, the 11th chapter, where they refer to this place as Sodom and Egypt, spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say Shalom.